Okay, so here I have a Spirograph program that was done by Andy and myself. This is our main. So we get three variables from the user, which is what this bit of code here is. And once you have those radiuses, you plug those into your Spirograph and then build a menu, and then you plug those into your game class and you run it, and then that's going to do the bulk of the work right there. So that's the main method. Let's start with the Spirograph. So you're taking three inputs here. One is the radius of the outer ring, one is the radius of your inner cog, if you will, and then one is the offset from the center of that cog, which is the point from which you're going to be drawing as that cog rotates around the outer ring. So we just set that in the window, and then we declare our private member variables, and then this function here, get next drawing point, is doing the bulk of the calculation. It's essentially rotating that ring, or that cog rather, around the ring and drawing a shape as it goes. So that's what this drawing point is here, and these equations we found online for doing the Spirograph. And then time here is going to advance the screen frame by frame. So that gets called in the game class. And then these are all pretty simple functions that just return values that we use throughout the program. So getting your radiuses, and then these increase, decrease, increase, decrease, pause, resume. Those are all used by the menu, so that you can alter your Spirograph from within the window. Then we go to our menu class and we load the font. We get the menu width and height in the arguments, and then we have 7 menu options here. So these each get the font, a color, they get a string, which is like what shows up on the screen, and then set the position. So since we have 7 of those, we divide by the number of items and just place those along the screen. And then we have a draw function to draw the menu, move up and move down, allow us to move around on the screen, and those change the color so that you know which menu item you're selecting rather. And then we go to our game class, and this kind of runs those two classes together. So we take a Spirograph and a menu, and then we reassign those to private member variables, and then we create a window with this block of code, and then we put a texture on that window so that we can draw on it. Create a circle, which is going to be the outer ring that we're rotating around, and then we draw the circle, the menu, and display it on the target. Run calls update, render, and process events, which all do separate things. So this is kind of like the big final function here. Update gets that next point from the Spirograph, so that's that math calculation that's going to determine where the next point to be drawn is. And then our next step is render. So we go down here to render. Render clears the screen, it draws, which is this function here, and then it displays. So draw is building the rectangle shape, getting the position of that rectangle from next point to draw, and then drawing it on the target, which is the texture. And then our last bit of code here is handling the menu. So process events, we're going to have some key inputs, up, down, and enter, and then the cases handle what to do with the Spirograph. So these are calling various functions depending on what menu item we've selected. And that's pretty much the whole project. We've got the headers, and then if we run it, you enter first the radius of the outer ring, so we found that 300 works well, and then the inner disk radius, that's going to be kind of the cog that's rotating around, 110 looks pretty cool. And then we're going to offset that 70 because that gives you a pretty cool shape. And then this should run. So here we've got the menu on the left with all of our function calls, and then the spirograph drawing on the right there. So I'll let this go for a bit and then execute some of these function calls. Okay, so I'll start by pausing it. And while it's paused, the time is still running. So if we were to resume this, it would the image would jump, but it's still on the same trajectory. So if you let it run for an infinite number of times, you get the exact same shape. So there we see it jumped. So I will pause that again. If we increase the radius, that's increasing the radius of the cog that's doing the drawing. So if we do that twice and then resume, you're going to get a different shape. And normally I would let these run out all the way, but it takes 5 minutes for some of them to draw fully, so I don't think that's a good use of time for this video. Pause that, and then we can displace that, or actually let's move the radius back. I think we did 3. No, I think we did 2. So now if we resume, we're actually back on the original path that we were on. And you can do this in real time too, but it makes your shapes look kind of ugly. So here I'll do an example of that. So it's moving the radius around. And you can do displacement, which changes kind of the angle at which you're drawing, but it doesn't change the radius of the cog. So there's that in real time. And those have some checks on them so that they can't get too far offline. So we'll bring that back a bit. And then the last thing we can call is exit, which closes the window. And that is our project.